So we're going to move on to the next part of today's session, which is the first of our keynote presentations. It's my honour to introduce, first up, Duncan Forrow, who is the Key Account Director at Switchee. Duncan, you've got a 10-minute presentation slot. You are now free to share your screen.
Thanks very much. Yeah, let me do that. Okay, so yeah, Switchee. I've got a few slides. Hopefully, it won't be death by PowerPoint, but I wanted to just set the scene a little bit about how we're helping our clients and the social housing sector in the move to net zero from a sustainability perspective, as well as a little bit of a history about who we are and what we do. So we've been around for about 6 years. As I said, we exist to improve the quality of life for people living through capturing data, and the data we capture is predominantly around the building fabric of a home, making sure that the property, or at least highlighting areas of deficiency or where a property is performing well with regard to the heating system, but also with regard to things like condensation, damp and mold, fuel poverty, and other things. The way we do that is via a smart thermostat. So if you've ever got, if some of you may have a Nest or a Hive sitting in your home, we're a social housing orientated device that does exactly the same thing. However, with some marked differences that I'll come on to in just a moment, all of which help you as landlords identify the properties most at risk. So if we're talking about from a sustainability perspective, from a net zero perspective, in the drive, from an EPC rating, getting your properties up to band C. If you're looking at properties with which take a long time to gain temperature or are very fast to lose their heat, and therefore may be deficient in terms of their insulation, we can provide you with data to help you identify those properties across your stock. As I say, we've been around for about 6 years. When we first started out, I think the Internet of Things was seen as a bit of a nice to have, a bit of a paperless office kind of thing. But over those 6 years, we've really developed business cases with as you can see there, about 70 customers. We're very pleased to be able to say that Flagship Group, a 35,000 unit organisation who based in the east of England, have recently will be rolling out to 20,000 of their properties over the next sort of 3 to 5 years. We're part of their boiler replacement programme, and we're really ingratiated with the business, delivering insight into how they're managing their properties, but also affecting their processes, refining their processes and making them a more efficient organization. So we're doing some really, really good work, and I've got some case studies to walk you through in a moment. So what is it and how does it work? This is a bit of a complex slide. It's a little bit busy for my liking, but it should give you a bit of an illustration as to what we do. So you can see on the left there, we've got a Switchee thermostat. That's our smart thermostat. It captures, residents interact with it very, very well. It's been iterated to be very inclusive. But it's not just a thermostat. We've packed that device with 5 other sensors that capture, obviously, temperature, but humidity, air pressure, motion, and light. That's captured in real time every 10 to 15 minutes and supplied over the GSM network, so we don't occupy Wi-Fi, into the cloud, and then that's presented in the form of a dashboard, geospatially representative of the stock that you have, and the metrics and the data are put according to that property, both at sort of portfolio level, but also at property level as well. So you can get at any one time a picture of the condition of your building fabric relative to the data we capture, but also with regard to, you can drill into each property and understand why, 22 Acacia Avenue might be underperforming. Is it being overheated? Is it underheated? Is it being ventilated in the right way? And that can help you and your responsive repairs team, your plan works from a retrofit measure sort of installation perspective, really understand and do the right thing for the right property. And that could be at archetype level, but obviously at resident level as well. So really powerful data that you just can't get. You'll know, I'm sure, about the Ombudsman sort of increase in challenge in disrepair, well, we can help with that as well. There's a huge amount we can provide you as a landlord to get ahead of those claims, but also ultimately provide the resident with the home they're entitled to. Okay, with regard to the sort of orientation of the presentation, I'm focusing on net zero. As I may have mentioned earlier, we're involved with quite a lot of the SHDF, the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund projects. I know, Georgina, I think it was, you're involved with that. But what I wanted to walk you through is how Switchee and technology generally can help housing providers achieve your net zero goals and feed into the sustainability agenda. What are the most important things to consider when you're putting together a technology package, and some examples of where we've done some implementations and some of the outcomes of that. So firstly, I mean, how can technology help housing providers? So obviously there's a past 2035 component to any retrofit, or there's a need to measure any retrofit you do with regards to past 2035. But it can extend into the new build specification. All too often, you know, organizations are still installing conventional boilers and so on. Well, maybe you need to look at PV and air source, ground source heat pumps and so on and so forth. And we can have an effect on that and actually measure the impact of those devices, those new devices coming into the sector. So yeah, challenges facing your stock. There's lots of them. Not knowing if you can harness that kind of technology, then we can provide that sort of insight. And I've got some case studies to tell you about there. Okay, so this is slightly offset. This, unfortunately, there's a little bit of an overlap, but the measurement of retrofit is a really important facet of any housing provider. You know, it's all well and good putting in PV, but what's the impact? It's all well and good putting in ventilation, but what's the difference? With all the funding that's available, there's an obligation from housing providers and the local authorities that are disseminating SHDF funds, but also Lab 1B and so on and so forth, Eco 4 coming up, to actually say, look, this is where we were. We've done this as an intervention. And that might be a physical intervention in the form, in this case, of some ventilation, but it might be an intervention in terms of educating the resident and then measuring the impact of that intervention, whatever it might be. And using Switchee data, you're able to actually document that to your stakeholders. And it's not just BAYS, it's your board, it's your exec directors, it's your heads of service, right through the organization. And that's not to be underestimated, to demonstrate as a business, as an organization, that you're having the desired effect. So from a business case perspective, being able to monitor, measure and validate the work that you're doing is critical and not to be underestimated. And Switchee is a really good place to do that. Okay. One of the things that is very good, and I mentioned about interventions earlier, what you're able to do with Switchee is actually communicate with the resident, and it could be a physical intervention. It could be something like a really good example about this actually is the use of air source heat pumps. You may know that air source heat pumps behave very, very differently to your conventional system, your heating system. And if a resident uses an air source or ground source heat pump in the same way as a conventional boiler, their energy bills are actually going to go up, if not through the roof. That's because air source and ground source heat pumps take a long time to gain temperature. If you've got a resident coming in using their thermostat, whacking the heat up to 30 degrees or something when they come in from work or when they wake up, it's going to be a very expensive way to do it. So what you can actually do is you can use some nudge theory to discuss or educate the resident into how best to utilize the systems that they've got that you're implementing. If you notice high humidity, you know, you can ask them, have you switched off the extractor fan in the bathroom where, you know, the readings are higher than you might think? You can actually survey the resident, say, look, can you smell any damp? Is there anything there that you think we should know about? And that can extend through to, as I say, nudge theory, but also some more granular asset management pieces, such as we've changed the door code, the lift is out. And, you know, what do you think about that? What do you think about us as a landlord, you know, from a transactional perspective, but also a, you know, perceptional surveys as well. So you can do that through the device as well, which is great. Because it's in the home, you get some really, really high engagement rates, which is brilliant, all of which help you to educate the resident and understand and digitally engage the resident to get them to do things. It might be that you're doing an outreach project in the local park, whatever it might be. This could be for housing officers, it could be for arrears officers, but it could also be from a sustainability nudge perspective. You know, something like, did you know you can reduce your energy bills by lowering your temperature of your Switchee by, or thermostat by 1 degree? All of that sort of stuff's really very powerful. Okay, because of the data we capture, we can provide savings to organizations that actually reduce the organization's carbon footprint. By using data from the motion sensor, we can provide you as a landlord with information on when's the best time to gain entry to the property. Darren, that's probably not relevant for you because obviously you deal with voids and they're pretty much vacant already, but it might be a consideration for you if you've got a void list and there's some motion detected in the property. I don't know if that's a consideration for you guys, but long story short, what you're able to do is say, well, look, we know the resident's going to be in roughly 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. Let's go and visit the property then. Let's not go scattergun approach and gain entry to the property when the resident's most likely to be there. That saves on failed access, failed visits, so less vehicle journeys, and so on. So lowering the number of call outs and improving your emissions, which is a really good thing to do. Interestingly, all of this sort of stuff is fed into our pending application. We're hoping to be able to make an announcement in the not too distant future from a CSR perspective and from a ESG perspective about our B Corp status, which is a really good thing. We're going to be, I think, the second organisation in social housing to have B Corp status, which we're really proud of. Appointment scheduling, this is an example of a graphical display of being able to say to a resident or say to the business, you know, this is the best time to gain entry to the property. It's not live data, it's built up over time, so there's no GDPR considerations there, and a little bit more about that in a moment. But actually, if you are able to tier that to a property and to a resident, then you're being much more efficient, because you're suggesting appointments to a resident that they're already using. Because we use the GSM network, what you're able to do is send signals to the device and to the resident in the form of messaging, like I said, but you're also able to remotely test, remote fire and remote restrict the heating system. Now that's great, because and this time of year is classic actually. In fact, we're launching quite a number of boiler test programs with a number of our clients as we speak, because in the not too distant future, in fact, my wife turned our heating on last night, there's going to be a huge peak in activity of your responsive repairs teams going out and fixing boilers that haven't been switched on, or heating systems that haven't been switched on for 3 or 4 months. By being able to remote fire that boiler, you can gain an understanding of how quickly that property is gaining temperature, and triaging those slow to heat properties to receive heating, a heating engineer call out very quickly. So we can do that. You can also remote restrict, but that's a slightly different argument. So lots going on. I'm conscious of time. I can't see a clock. Can someone give me an indication of how I'm doing on time? Am I nearly out?
12.5 minutes you're up to.
I'm up to what, sorry?
12.5 minutes.
Well, in that case, I should probably leave it there. Apologies. There's lots there. I'm more than happy to have more of a conversation with you guys offline and get in touch. My details are down at the end here. I've completely run out of time, but there are my details. I look forward to talking to you